I've always been fascinated with cameras. Most cameras, historically, have come from Japan. I'm like, I don't want to fall out of love with Japan. If I spend too long here, is the magic going to disappear? Most evenings or weekends, I would be out with my camera somewhere. The light in Japan is just different. Anything that is kind of like blah, 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 blah in Japan does incredibly well.
Hey there, and thank you for tuning in. We're excited to bring you another great conversation today. If you like the show and want to support us, please hit the subscribe button so we can keep bringing you great content week after week. And if you're feeling extra generous, give this video a like and share your thoughts and comments down below. Thank you so much. And now, let's get into it. Welcome to Unpacking Japan. I'm Toby, and today we welcome Joe Allam. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me here and hopefully get to share some stories of Japan.
You're a filmmaker who's been making content now on YouTube for 10 years, but recently, just about a year ago, actually decided to move here to Osaka after many, many trips to Japan. So let's go back a little bit onto that journey of what kind of got you first interested in Japan and what made you decide to move here?
First of all, 10 years, like in so many ways, it feels like still just getting started on stuff. Like everything's just sort of getting to a point. It's like, okay, now I'm ready. Now I feel prepared. Now I can actually go and like make the thing. And that might sound kind of hilarious. It's like, dude, you had 10 years. What have you been doing? But no, genuinely, like it really feels like it's just the start of things. And if I go back 10 years to when I started YouTube channel, and I guess that was also the first time I came to Japan. Japan has always been a thread through the channel. It's like the many trips I came here. I think it was like 18 trips or something in those 10 years, minus the 3 years of COVID when everything was closed and I couldn't actually come here.
It's like nearly twice a year.
And I think the most I came one year was like 6 times or something.
Wow.
To be realistic about all of it as well, is the vast majority, about 80% of it, was work related. So it was either like a company that I was working with here that I would, be invited over and go spend some time with, and I'd always extend it. So the trips just got longer and longer to the point where they frequently got to like 2 months or so. And then in the year before I moved here, I was doing 3-month trips. But if I go even further back, like what really excited me about Japan originally, it takes a while to work out where it came from. But I think I can pinpoint it to PlayStation. So I think it was just seeing like the original PlayStation and then just seeing games that existed in Japan that you couldn't get anywhere else in the world. And I was always like, why? Like, why do they get the cool stuff? I was like, okay, they make PlayStation, cool. And then a new console would come out and it wouldn't be released in the UK or Europe for a while. America, if they were lucky, would get it around the same time as Japan, but usually Japan got things first. And I was like, what? Like, why are they getting things first? What the hell, man?
And Europe very late, usually 6 months to 1 year after being released elsewhere.
And then, of course, as the tech industry was just becoming more and more sort of like socially involved with people, things like phones and camera phones and color screens and all that stuff was just so prominent in Japan. I was like, man, this place is fascinating. Like there was all this technology and just like lights and just things happening, and we just didn't have that in the UK. And then there was the Football World Cup 2002, and to me that really put a spotlight on Japan as like, here's some amazing like stadiums, here's like the tech and everything that's happening, here's how wildly different the cultures are. And I was like, whoa, what was I then, like 11-year-old, that just blew my mind. And it had always been like an interest to me to get here. And of course, I finally did come here, and then you start to realize some of the realities that actually Japan was ahead of its time in the tech world. That has since kind of stalled a little bit, and now it's very much simultaneously like 100 years in the future and like 100 years in the past. Too many industries here, just they continue as they have because they've always done it that way.
So you kind of have this interest in the technology produced in Japan, and that kind of makes you want to look more into the country, and you finally get opportunities to travel here. You come here a lot and the trips extend.
Yep.
And so a year ago, or a little over a year ago, you decide, okay, I'm moving. Was there a specific moment that you kind of decided, okay, I'm packing my bags, it's time to explore, to try something new?
During COVID. So I'd always thought about like wanting to live here. I think from my very first trip, which was just like a week long, immediately, like that trip really did change my life because so much of everything I experienced here made sense to me. Like it all aligned with the way that I think, like the attention to detail and so many things. It all just made sense. If there was anything that felt different or, some might call it weird, to me, it wasn't a case of like, oh, that's weird or whatever. It was more like, there's a reason for this. And then I would understand it, maybe certain ways of going through things. Like, for example, this is universal across the world. Certain train stations might have like passageways that are signposted in certain areas. And you're like, well, this is the easy way. Why don't we go that way? But you go that way because it manages the flow of traffic and it keeps things moving efficiently. I notice things like that in Japan all the time that other people might be like, oh, this is frustrating. Why is it done this way? And I just recognized this attention to how to move mass amounts of things in as efficient a manner as possible, and then other stuff that just has reason. And I was like, I like that. And so I think from that very first trip, I did think maybe I could live here at some point. Like I could see everything just connected with me. But then I felt like I got to a point where I was maybe talked out of the idea. And people would often comment on videos like, dude, when are you just going to move here? You keep coming back. I'm like, I don't want to fall out of love with Japan. That was the thought process of, if I spend too long here, is the magic going to disappear? I like the magic. I like coming on a trip and just being here for, a few weeks or a month and just seeing the best bits. And then during COVID, the whole time, from the very beginning, I actually did have a flight that was supposed to come to Japan, like I think middle of March or so, 2020. And as it was getting closer and closer to the dates, I was like, I don't think this is going to happen. It's looking sketchy. And then there was a part of me that was like, well, if it does happen, where would I rather be stuck? I think I'd be all right if I was stuck in Japan. And then as it turns out, decision was made for me and the airlines canceled the flight. So I didn't get to come. But during those 3 years, the whole time I was like, I just want to be in Japan. Like it just really hit home to me if that's where I wanted to be. And then not being able to be here because of everything was closed just made it even stronger. And so eventually it just got to a point where I was like, okay, I want to move to Japan. And when it all sort of came down to the timing of stuff, it all happened really quick. So I just effectively reached out to a few companies that I'd worked with before. I was like, I want to move to Japan. Not entirely sure how to do it yet. This is my current setup with my business in the UK, my YouTube channel and other stuff. Is there any way you can help me or can you advise on stuff? And I got 3 offers for a visa immediately.
Wow, that's very convenient.
And I was like, okay, that's amazing. One was the clear option, clear winner. And they started the process that day. And then 3 months later, like almost to the day, I had my visa.
That's the efficiency you were just talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
So you had this kind of fear a little bit of, you don't want the magic of Japan to disappear by actually moving here, but then you decide to uproot your entire life and your entire business and move it here to Osaka.
Yeah.
How was it like for you to arrive in Japan, not knowing that you're not going to be here for just a few weeks, but that you have to find an apartment, you have to settle in, and you're staying here for a longer period?
Yeah, I mean, it was absolutely probably the most stressful time in my life, because everything, you have to start from zero effectively. Your whole life needs to be rebuilt. Nothing really transfers over. And doing that in a language that I didn't really understand very well. And, you know, even just looking at emails and letters that come through, I can't easily differentiate between two emails what company they're from. And so everything was just all happening at once. And if you're familiar in Japan, things like business emails that come through, whether it's marketing or whatever, quite often they're just plain text.
Yeah, and very long.
Yeah, and very long. And the company name will be written, you know, with like kanji, hiragana, or whatever. And so I can't easily and quickly decipher, is this an important email or letter? Or is this just a, thanks for signing up to our loyalty program. Here's your warranty for the TV that you just bought or something.
I can 100% relate. It's you need to stop for a moment and actually focus and read it.
Yeah.
But it's not like at first glance you know if it goes into the spam box or not, as you would do with an English email.
Like I get hundreds of emails all the time, and I think I use the delete key to navigate my email. It's just delete. That's the way I progress through stuff. When it started getting to the like the Japanese ones, I was like, I've got to highlight it. I've got to translate it. Like that was a really stressful time because not only was I doing all of the things of moving into a place and finding an apartment and, you know, setting up things, I was also effectively starting some new work, doing film production elsewhere. So I was getting like briefs coming through, all in Japanese as well. And so everything just all swamped on me. I was like, okay, this is a lot. I need to take some time to really find a system for this. And one piece of advice that was given to me by a friend, which I set up almost immediately, which I think is so valuable, is create a separate email address or an alias purely for Japanese things.
Oh,
so
interesting.
If you use like Gmail or iCloud or something, you can create an alias. So it's technically the same inbox, but your it could be filtered in a certain way. So then you set up like a mail rule to say if it goes to this address, which is say your email -jp or something, put it into this folder. And so that really just helped separate the noise from the signal, I guess, or the other way around. So I could really dedicate like, okay, this is a time where I'm in a good place where I can comfortably go through my email with a bit of patience, translate things, because I'm only seeing the emails from Japanese companies. So I just go into that folder and that's where they all are. And likewise, if ever I need to find an email again, I know exactly where to look first, and then I can go through the dates rather than having to try and cipher through everything. So that tip I did from day one, and that's really helped. Likewise, there's a lot of companies you might sign up to for an account, and there's just no way to unsubscribe.
So hard, right? You need to actually go to the website. You need to log in with logins that you probably have forgotten by now, and you need to go through some obscure menu to unsubscribe. You can't just... It's interesting because I think in the West they have made rules for like you need to be able to unsubscribe easily in like 2 clicks or something.
And even you should be able to just reply to an email with the word unsubscribe.
Oh,
but that doesn't really work here.
Okay.
So yeah, the only way I've got around it is either just blocking, like creating a rule in email to block that email, or just send it to junk and hope that my mail learns that this one should be junk. But the trouble is that could also send some actual important emails. So yeah, that's one aspect of like daily stress in life, I guess, that's very minimal, but noticeable.
You've decided to move to Osaka.
Yes.
Most people move to Tokyo, I would say, maybe because there are more opportunities, a bigger network or something. Why did you choose Osaka?
So over the 10 years or so of coming here, I've traveled kind of all over Japan. Various projects, various self-set projects and trips and things that I've done. I know Tokyo incredibly well. And I'd been to Osaka a few times, but only for like a couple of days or so each time. When I was here, was it last year now? Kind of losing track. Yeah, so what year are we? 2024?
24, yeah.
So I came here and I spent like 2 or 3 weeks here. And I was editing some projects at the time and just kind of needed to be somewhere a little bit cheaper in Japan, rather than like paying to stay in Tokyo, but also not really having the time and space to actually be out making videos and other stuff. So it almost felt like I needed to just dedicate my time to this project I was working on. And during that time, I felt like I uncovered that little bit deeper level of Osaka. And it was such a warm welcome from everyone. Like, I know everyone always says like, oh, it's so much friendlier in Osaka versus Tokyo. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think both are just as friendly. It's maybe people can be a little bit more guarded in Tokyo. And it could be that people are a little bit more focused on, their channel, their lane, because there's so much happening. Whereas here, that guard is significantly lower. And so immediately you can just start building connections and talking with people and other things. And I really felt that here. And I felt like I got to a deeper level of Japanese culture that I didn't have before in times that I spent in Tokyo. And then likewise, when it came to moving here, I knew that I'd have to buy everything. I'd have to buy essentially all of my furniture, my whole apartment, everything would have to be kind of new or acquired from, secondhand places, whatever here. As well as finding the apartment and other stuff. Significant financial investment. That had me a little bit worried. And that really helped just sort of settle as like, I want to be in Osaka. What's the logical reason other than just my emotional connection to the place? Because I know that there are more opportunities for me in Tokyo. Mm-hmm. It's like, how can I make it more logical to kind of go with my heart on this rather than, making all of my situations harder? I was like, well, apartments and things are actually cheaper here. I'm going to need to set up everything. So I can do that now and get set up much faster, rather than say moving to Tokyo and it taking significantly longer because it was going to be so much harder and probably a smaller apartment and other things. I was like, okay, that's a very simple way of me saying, yep, let's go with my heart. I want to be in Osaka. Made sense.
Because like you were saying, you also uprooted and moved your business over here, right?
Yeah.
How was that logistically speaking? I imagine you were working with a lot of clients and had a lot of projects back in the UK. Mm-hmm. And now suddenly you're here, a different country, different clients. You were talking about the many emails in Japanese that you need to decipher. But how was that transition for you?
Yeah, it's tough. And for the most part, it's still kind of ongoing. So it's kind of a case of still very much have UK business. Now I have like Japan business that I'm working with and dealing with, and effectively it's almost like I've expanded to have a team of people who can be like a sales people. Like they help find projects and become like producers on projects and project managers, which I didn't really have before. But because of the setup that I've got now, that really works in my favor. So that's really helped soften the blow on things. And we talk in English most of the way as well. They helped a lot with they'll throw in Japanese that I might understand. And so with the context, I then learn it. And likewise, being here and with the openness of people around Osaka, I feel like my Japanese level has improved dramatically, like way faster than I ever expected.
Are you studying as well a lot?
I did for a little bit, but I didn't get on with the way that it was being conducted. Because I know I'm in a really niche position where I've got like 10 years of experience here of hearing the language a lot and, hearing it on a very sort of like close level and a lot of business level as well. And yet I wasn't really speaking it during that time. And yet, as I've learned through social interactions here, I've built up speaking ability, and I feel like the pronunciation aspect of stuff is good. But I missed a lot of the basics. So the lessons were kind of like very, very basic. I was like, no, I'm kind of beyond that, but I do need some foundational support. So I did some like one-to-one stuff, and it just ended up following the way that this book was written. I was like, yeah, okay. Well, now that I've got the book, I can just study that myself. So I'm actually looking for some different ways to study.
Yeah, I think many people have many different ways of learning a language, and I guess there's one to each their own, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I did about 3 weeks or so of those lessons, or maybe a month, and it helped in the sense of knowing how I'll best learn the language. Because I know I'm a very visual person, I need to see it written down, but at the moment, the actual reading of it is probably the hardest part. So I was like, okay, I'm going to dedicate time to learning the written language. That again has improved massively in the last year. But yeah, I'm finding systems. I love systems and processes to things, and I think I found my way of learning that. And yeah, it's come on like way faster than expected.
So you settled here now, deep in Osaka. You have your business transposed. You have your place to live. Everything is going, and you work as a filmmaker.
Yes.
When did that actually get started? Let's go back in time once more and kind of understand, like, how did you actually start YouTube? How did you decide to go into that business, especially on your own, so to say?
So I've always been fascinated with cameras. Like, I've just always loved the way they work. And to go back to your point as well as interest in Japan, is most cameras historically have come from Japan. And to this day, most cameras are made in Japan, or rather designed in Japan. So yeah, I've always loved cameras. And I remember I must have been like maybe I was 5 or 6 years old. Me and my brother, he's 4 years older than me, just playing around with a video camera. And I think my grandma had, actually no, sorry, my dad bought one once. I can't remember where he got it. It wasn't that great. And then I think his mum, so my grandmother, was inspired by it. And she bought one as well, but she bought a better one. So we would borrow hers, and we would like use this little video camera and just making like tiny figurines and just doing stop motion, just like start, stop, just moving the figurines and just making little videos.
That's quite a complex thing to start with. Stop motion is not easy.
Yeah, I guess so. For us, it was the most enjoyable way of just making a scene because it was so hands-on. And to think back now, like, we probably spent hours doing this because obviously stop motion takes a long time to do things. And that kept us occupied, probably for whole weekends or more, to make this tiny little thing. And when you're doing it on like a tape camera, there's no editing. You're doing the editing in camera. So the results we'd get were immediate. And that was just, so much fun. I think my brother still has the tape for those. I need to find them at some point and digitize them and put them somewhere.
I think a lot of people want to see this now.
Yeah, because they were pretty fun. Really kind of stupid and just like not much happening. But using like little toy cars and whatever and moving them around. And then as I got older, started to play a little more with camera trickery on, like doing magic in front of a camera. So again, using the ability to start and stop and with the remote. So you can like just click your fingers and disappear. That type of thing. Like, that was always fun to play around with. And then, so I think I was doing video stuff before I started to take photography seriously. So I did have a stills camera, like a point and shoot film camera, and got very interested in like SLRs that were sort of in, I don't know, charity shops or something. I was like, how does this work? What's going on? My dad would kind of explain it, and he'd be able to, say like, oh, shutter speed does this and aperture does this, and sort of like have a basic understanding of a camera that could translate to me. And so, I had that fascination with things. And then I guess it was 2006, 2005. Complete sideline story here. I was doing a lot of design work at school. So I was like 14 or so. And on the side, I was just making, I don't know, like logos or whatever, and just doing...
Just for fun?
Things, just making up brands and just doing whatever. And I think very, very early on, I was using Microsoft Publisher. I don't know if you ever used that.
No, never.
So I think it was their really crap answer to InDesign or
The early Adobe days.
Yeah. I mean, what was the other program? I can't remember.
Paint.
Squawk. Yeah, the kind of like a layouting program. Anyway, I was doing stuff in there. My brother then went to college for graphic design, and he introduced me to the Mac because he had to use the Mac at college. And so then I started using like Illustrator and Photoshop and other things. So I was doing like design bits. Interestingly, my science teacher at the time, again, very weird
I'm
thing.
fascinated by the story. I just want to see where this is going.
So my science teacher recognized that I was doing like design creative work. He had a background at the BBC as a cameraman, but also did web development. He had a project come to him to build a website for an arts festival in the town. He was kind of too busy doing the school's website and other media production stuff. And he was like, I think this is a perfect project for Joe. So I've seen that he's doing design work. We had a pretty good relationship at the school anyway, like just, very, like I was a good student, I guess. He was like, this could be a great project. If you want to, take it on, I can help mentor you through this. And he's like, the payment is probably going to be about £500 or so. And I was like, whoa, 500 quid. I could get a camera with that. So I did this project and then immediately went and bought a DSLR. So I got the Canon 350D. And from then on, I was like really taking photography seriously. But the video side of stuff took a while for it to sort of kick off for me, because I just missed the boat on the launch of video on DSLRs. Just the timing of when I bought my camera and then when I upgraded, video stuff came at a point where I was like, damn, I've like upgraded my camera a year ago. I'm not really in a position. I'm a student at the moment. I can't afford to buy a new camera. So I just waited. And then it was a few years later until eventually I got a camera that did video. I was like, okay, now I can start making videos.
I love how vividly you can retrace your interest and how basically your father, your grandmother, your brother, your teachers kind of all played a role into taking you on this journey where you're now been on now for a long time.
Yeah, it's true actually. When I think back to some of my other interests, so I had a career as graphic design before what I'm doing now, and doing like web development. I continued that on and doing a lot of coding work and other things. My other interests at the time at school was geography. And at one point I was like, maybe I want to be a pilot. I was like, I want to travel the world and, do these things. It then filtered through and I sort of followed my brother a little bit doing graphic design. So he was doing that at college, and then I went on to the same college, but they'd built a new campus by this point. So it felt like a very new thing. So I continued on, did graphic design there. And then I went on to university and did graphic design. And then I went into career with graphic design. So I sort of really pursued it. And I think originally there was maybe some questions before of like, do you actually want to do graphic design? Like, is this really where you want to go? Or are you just copying your brother? Or like, because you're really good at maths, or you want to be a pilot. Like, why this art direction that makes no money? Like, there was, this real question of things. And I never really felt pressured by anyone to say, you can't do that or whatever. But that's maybe the closest moment I got to maybe questioning a little bit further of like, is this going to work out? Because, I keep being told like I could make loads if I was working in accountancy and stuff.
Become a lawyer, become a doctor.
I couldn't help but look at that and just be like, no, like, I just don't want to do that. That seems boring. I know I'm a creative person at heart. On every car ride that we'd go in, I'd bring a wad of paper and a load of pens and crayons and whatever, and I would just be drawing all the time. Like, as much as I could do the academic side, and I feel like I'm very left and right brain, I knew which side of my brain I definitely wanted to be, and that was the creative side. So continuing it on, and then funnily enough, like full story or full circle is that I'm now doing a lot of travel. I'm not flying the plane, but I'm doing a lot of the travel. I continued to do a lot of design work. I ended up doing a lot of web development and coding, and that uses a whole heap of maths and algebra and all sorts, and like all the algorithmic stuff. And then it's all to support this visual work of photography and filmmaking. So everything came together. But now it's just under the umbrella of being a photographer filmmaker. And I love that that is the sort of foundation to it.
I want to go back to that moment where you finally get a camera that can do both video and photography. And so you start experimenting more. And I assume that this might be the time when you start your YouTube channel as well and post some of the photos.
It's the same year, yeah.
But you're working in graphic design, or you're a student then working in graphic design. When comes a moment where you're like, okay, I'm going to do something. I'm going to try to make a career out of this, or focus on YouTube when kind of photography content was starting to blow up a little bit?
Yeah, so this was in 2014. So I'd been taking photography seriously for about 8 years or so at this point. I want to say seriously, I mean in the sense that most evenings or weekends, I would be out with my camera somewhere. So living in London by this point, like after, or I guess during uni and then after uni, I would find events that were happening. So whether that was like the London Marathon or the Half Marathon, or maybe it was like some art show somewhere or just something. And I'd go and I'd bring my camera, and that was a way to sort of get to know the camera and just do the things that I wanted to be hired for. At the same time, I was working as a designer during the day and during the week. And I liked the crossover of things, because there would sometimes be projects that would come up and it's like, we need some photography for this. And I'm like, you could just hire me to do that rather than paying for the stock photo. So then it could sort of work with my own images, and it made the design work a lot easier and better. And then, 2014 was when I bought the 70D, which was the first of my like SLR cameras to have video. And I was so excited for it. I'd been doing some video at uni, like just borrowing a few DV cameras and the 60D and the 5D Mark II. So I was doing like some bits, but it was always on such a limited time. Like I'd borrow the camera for a day or two, have to go and be somewhere and the weather's maybe not great. And I'm like, okay, well,
missed my chance.
This is all I've got it. So I can do this and do whatever. And I was uploading those to Vimeo at the time. But then, 2014, I was like, no, I'm watching a lot of things on YouTube already. I'm seeing people daily vlogging and doing other stuff. But I'm not really seeing anyone showing photography. Maybe some people are taking some photos and then they're, showing it in some of their vlogs. But I'm not really seeing any photography vlog channels. It's like, I want to be inspired. I want to watch the things that make me want to go out and shoot, because when I do see like a tiny glimmer of someone showing their gear in like their daily vlog, and it could be maybe they're like a beauty vlogger and they're like, oh, here's what's in my bag, and they're pulling out loads of makeup and stuff, and then it's like, oh, and here's a Sony RX100. I'm like, oh, what have you got there? Like, how are you using
what are you
this?
filming with?
Yeah.
And how are you setting it up, and how are you using your camera to film your content?
And then you see some of the creative ones. So just seeing people making stuff. Like, say for example, I don't know if you've ever heard of Claire Marshall. Hey Claire. So she is a beauty lifestyle vlogger, and she did some really cool videos like about products that I'm not interested in. But seeing them, I was like, damn, this is a really creative way to show something. And doing it with like such a small point and shoot camera. I was like, I want to do something like that, but for my type of audience and interests. And likewise, I want to continue my inspiration for photography. I can't find what I'm trying to watch. So I guess I'm just going to make it. And the only channel that I can reference that was doing what I wanted to watch was Chase Jarvis. And I've seen this all the time on like when I talk about the history of things. His channel was very commercially like based. He would show behind the scenes on big projects, whether that's doing things like Samsung releasing some color displays, and he's creating this vivid scene of color and other stuff. So he's promoting like a small product, but doing it in such a big fashion on a commercial shoot. Or some other stuff that you couldn't actually see the end result for, but you just see the behind the scenes. And that was fascinating to me. And it just made me immediately want to pick up my camera and just go and make something and do something. And at the time, working as a designer, I wanted to go freelance and I wanted to be hired more for my photography. So I was like, all of these things combined, let me just put myself out there and show my process. I'm already showing my photos in places like Flickr and Instagram. Let me show the process of how I'm doing it and just vlog it. And it was awkward as hell to start with, just, you know, walking around London with this tiny little, I think it was a Sony G85 or something, G90. I don't know if that's the right naming for it, but yeah, this small little point and shoot. And yeah, I just started by that. And then it wasn't too long afterwards, I then got hired for some photography work. So getting hired for like some events photography, or like JP Morgan for one time they do like a sponsored run for their employees across London, and they'd seen my marathon videos that I'd made. And so they were like, can you come and do the photos for our event? And then some charities reached out, like Oxfam. It's like, oh, can you come and cover our runners doing this? And very quickly I started to get like clients, I guess, photography stuff. But then even quicker than that was the channel grew. And the channel just grew and grew because it was early days photography YouTube. And other people really wanted to see this as well. And so I was really finding my footing into, okay, what do I want to show here? And then also at the same time was me going to Japan and then making photography videos in Japan. And anything that is kind of like blah, 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 blah in Japan does incredibly well. And so all of that combined just was the perfect storm of growth for me. And I didn't really realize it so much at the time. I guess I very quickly tapped into Japan as like a upwardsly trending topic because of the Olympics. And I had like a 6-year strategy, I guess, of, okay, how do I focus on sharing Japan without oversaturating the channel to being just Japan related things? And yeah, found ways that I could like interweave it so that I could still travel around the rest of the world that I was desperate to do, but then always bring it back to being like, well, Japan's the core of this whole journey. And that seemed to work really well, other than the 6-year strategy with the Olympics, which then COVID happened and at that delayed. Mark. Yeah. And it was during that time where everything was up and up and up, and then it just all fell off a cliff. The whole thing just disappeared. Yeah, and that was devastating.
So you have your filmmaker, photographer career picking up, your content creation picking up, and you finally come to Japan to experience this and for work, but also for your personal enjoyment. As a photographer and videographer, what was it here in Japan that kind of really fascinated you? I recall some of your early videos of Japan is basically you walking around and doing street photography. And I was watching those videos too, and you were very excited by the shades and the different layers of the cities, the reflections, the building.
Yeah.
Was there something in particular that you were kind of like after at that time?
I think for photography, I say this every day, it's always been the light. The light in Japan is just different. Like it just hits different. I recognize it on my camera. I recognize it with my eyes. Like everything is just that subtly different. It's almost like the air is like clearer in many ways. The sky feels higher.
Well, it's very cloudy in London, right?
Yeah, that's also a vast difference. But at the same time, it's like I've traveled to nice exotic places, you know, like sunny places, and I'm like, it's just different in Japan. And likewise to that, Japan is a very clean place, like out on the streets, the cars are very clean, everything, the buildings, whatever. Realistically, it doesn't actually rain that much in Japan. So the buildings themselves stay clean when they're cleaned. And with that comes all the reflections. and the sort of the chrominess of things. It's very sharp. It has this glow about it. And it makes so much sense to me why the cameras are tuned in the way that they are for their color profiles and other stuff. Because when you use the cameras in Japan, you get the best results from it. You could take that same camera and take it somewhere else that's nice and bright, but the colors just make sense for how they react to the sensors here. And I think that's maybe quite difficult for someone to interpret who doesn't shoot with cameras. And it's funny, people ask me all the time, meet people in bars and they're like, why Japan? And when I say about the light, everyone's like, eh? Like what? They have no idea, because they're like, well, it's just the sun. But for someone who spends their whole day chasing the light, this is where I've ended up. Yeah.
In the end, you mentioned the color profiles of cameras as well, but it doesn't really matter, right? Which camera you use, which gear you use.
I'd say to an extent, there's a balance on how that goes. So on a performance level, you definitely get the best out of your camera when the light is good. And so yeah, when it's a case of like, well, the gear doesn't matter, it's like, well, the most important thing is the light. And so when you're on location, that's, I think, how I've ended up here. Yeah, and the way that they interact with it, and they'll have their subtle tendencies. But I could use the same camera, say here or in London, both on sunny days, and I feel like I'll get better results here. And so yeah, you're right. It's in that instance, the gear doesn't matter because it's the same, but the light is the subject, and yeah, it makes huge difference. It makes a difference to me personally as well. Like I definitely get very affected by dark and sort of like, I don't want to say dark and gloomy days, because sometimes they can be quite moody and enjoyable to go and shoot. But I think just dark and mediocre days, just the average low cloud pressure, like that affects me. And I can think back to, I think it was 2021. There was a stat that came out from London, or rather, I think it might have been the whole UK. It was so dark, and it felt so dark. And then at the end of it, I think it was on January 1st, they said, by the way, in December, there was only 19 hours of sunlight throughout the whole month. Hours. Like, that's less than an hour per day of daylight. It was just overcast. And I think it had been going on for about 8 weeks or so. And it's one of those situations where you're aware of it, like, oh, it's cloudy or whatever. And then before long, you're like, wait, hasn't it been cloudy for like a week or two? And then it goes on, like, I can't remember when I last saw the sun. And that really has an effect on me. So being somewhere that does have sunnier days and like brighter and whatever, and it's not necessarily the temperature difference that I enjoy, it's just light. Like, as a photographer as well, that just hits me so much deeper, I think.
You're chasing the light in Japan, and you have a 6-year plan leading up to the Olympics of the kind of content you wanna do. 6 years in today's time is kind of long.
I was about to say that feels short.
And how was then coming on all those trips and photographing and filming Japan actually changed the kind of content you want to do, and your filmmaking process, and maybe shaped you in a way that, oh, actually, I want to move away from doing one thing and into something new?
I think it's changed maybe my thought process on it, but I definitely recognize it hasn't changed my action. So I say that in a way of, I recognize that I should really spend more time publishing stuff that is more in the moment, rather than having this long-term like plan and approach and stuff. And that's been very distinct from the beginning, because I've seen creative people burn out because they're doing too much like all the time. And you kind of need to slow down and you need to pace yourself. So I've always had this mentality of having a longer approach to stuff. But at the same time, in the world of social media, that doesn't always work, because timeliness is often the most important factor. It's almost like timeliness first, then accuracy, then quality. And that bothers me, because I kind of enjoy it in the opposite order. I enjoy quality to things and accurate, reporting if there's anything factual. And when it comes out, it doesn't matter to me because it's because of those other two things. But for social media and the way that most humans sort of engage with stuff, and that's why algorithms work the way they are, they're a reflection on people, which as a side note, I find it funny when people complain about the algorithms. Like, it's not the algorithm you're complaining about, it's just people. It's just how people work, and that's the reflection of it. So yeah, I do recognize that now my approach should be, okay, if I've got the next 10 years of thinking on things, I need to really chop and do a lot of the smaller bits kind of all together. But I also know that my action hasn't shown that. I'm still very much taking my time with longer projects and not sharing as much of the journey as I could share. So that's something I'm working on because I know that it could benefit me with my social media growth of stuff. But realistically, that's not what I'm chasing. Like, there are plenty of channels that have overgrown mine, like doing very similar things and doing things often a lot better as well. But for me, I'm at a comfort level where I just love going out with a camera all the time, making things. I don't always share the stuff that I'm making, but that connection and enjoyment, yeah, has been great. And I guess another thing is to jump back a number of years. My goal was to get to Japan. Now that I'm here, I guess I'm just kind of figuring out what's the next goal, because I achieved that and I now feel very settled here and comfortable. So what's the next goal? What am I doing for, the remainder of my time and renewing visas and other stuff? Yeah, so I'm figuring that out.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
Over the last few years, a lot of content creators have come to Japan, some to live, some just to travel. But the amount of content being done about Japan has just dramatically increased. And sometimes it feels like there's content done for the sake of doing content and putting something out there. Has this somehow affected your work? Or have you kept it like you were describing it at the very beginning, where you took inspiration from Hey Claire, and you're like, I like that kind of content. I want to do this style about a different topic for my audience.
Yep.
Have you been able to keep your focus there? Or?
Yeah, I think so. I guess that goes back to my point of saying like something in Japan does well on social media. And you're right, there's a lot of stuff that's posted that isn't unique to Japan, but gets labeled and titled in a way that then draws the attention, and then people go and recreate it. And that's where you get pockets. That's why you end up with situations like Dotonbori, where it's just one area that it seems like everyone comes to Osaka and they're like, well, this is what we do here because that's all that has been spoken about and published. But we both know there's so much more to the city to kind of explore. And yeah, you see how those pockets and social media trends happen. And likewise, we've seen what's happened with Kyoto with the over tourism. There are elements of that I don't want to be connected with, and I'm not really making things that fall into those like traps, I guess. So that creates some separation. And likewise, I think my audience also recognizes that the people often message and they're like, I watch a lot of Japan stuff, but your stuff's just different. Like it feels so much more like empathetic to like Japanese culture. It's like you're going under the layers of things, but not in like a expose way. It's not like you're trying to expose people and other stuff, or trying hard to get into like underground Japan. It's just a very natural progression deeper into things. So I really appreciate that people recognize that, and that's always been my goal.
You describe yourself as a filmmaker, and especially in this age of social media content creation, the term filmmaker has kind of changed a little bit in its definition. Yep. How would you define this, and what's important for you with this?
Yeah, that's a good point, because about 10 years ago, when I was starting my YouTube channel, I was very reluctant to call myself a filmmaker, because I was very much like, I was learning the way. And one of the reasons of starting the channel is because I wanted to improve on my video stuff as well. And so using that as a term it didn't quite feel like the right thing to do. It was almost like, well, a little bit of a fraud if you're saying that.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah. And then I started, learning about that so much more. And I was like, okay, at what point do I feel comfortable with this? It's like, I am being paid to go and make films in places and videos and stuff. So at what point can I confidently say that? And then I can't remember where it came about from, but I just started to realize that people on the internet and just people that you talk to, they will communicate back to you in the language that you use to them. So if you hand someone a piece of paper and you call it a brochure, when they're talking about it, they'll be like, oh, so this brochure that you've given me. Whereas if you hand it to them and call it a flyer, they'll call it a flyer. So using the language that you use, as long as you're not doing it incorrectly, can actually be a benefit for both people. It just gives context into like, oh, so this is how we talk about your thing. And I think I just got to a point where I felt confident enough in my video and with the projects that I was doing that I was clearly being hired to do, that it just felt, I guess, comfortable to say, oh, photographer and filmmaker. And then as I started working on much bigger productions, the type where you would have other people and, you're using specialist lenses and you're bringing lights to a thing or specific microphones, I was like, okay, this is so much more than just a kid with a camera. And I think from there on, yeah, it just felt comfortable calling it that way.
And as a filmmaker in Japan now, you were talking about how you like to have this more natural expose of life here, of the things you see. What are some of the films or the videos you'd like to make now that you're here and without a limited amount of time?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked on that, because something that has been on my mind for close to, I guess, 2 years now is, and pretty much the whole time I've been in Osaka. So this is like a 2-part thing. It's like a love letter to the city and how much I love this place. But it's also like a love letter to my camera. And the idea is I want to make a film that's titled in a way of like my camera in me, or like, I guess grammatically correct is my camera and I, but I think the rest of the world doesn't read things quite like that. And the idea being that every day I'm out with a camera. I carry one wherever I go. And I'll always make an effort to just get some photos of something. Doesn't mean they're going to be anything special, worthwhile, but I'll have a camera on me. And then when I go for like dinner somewhere, if I happen to be eating out that day or go for a drink, the camera is with me and it ends up on the counter and, I get on with stuff. Within moments, people are always like, oh, that's a nice camera. Or like, it's a prop or it's a talking point of making connections. And I've gotten to a point where I've sort of tested it in ways where if I don't have the camera out, can I still start those conversations? And I was like, yeah, of course I can. But the camera is such an easy opportunity for someone to be like, you seem interesting. You're not from here. How do I start a conversation? That's a nice camera. And that camera, or, whichever camera I have on the day, whether it's, a smaller one or a bigger one, or sometimes I have a microphone on as well, that camera situation has opened so many opportunities for me. I've made new business connections. I've made friends. I've been able to, play sports with various people because all these conversations have started with a camera. And it's not because they're creative people either. Like, there's a few people that have spotted the camera and they're also photographers, and that's been interesting. But for the most part, they're just regular people who happen to know the brand Fujifilm, and they're like, oh, that's a Japanese brand. And I'm like, oh, yeah.
Triggers interest.
Yeah. And the irony there is like, most cameras I'll have with me will be a Japanese brand. So it's an easy conversation that way as well. But yeah, I want to make a film that sort of shows my experience of that and sort of documents how powerful that is. And I think that can translate around the world. It's not unique to Japan, but if you're in a position where you want to open yourself up to other people, having some sort of prop or some thing that's not, it's not outlandish, not like you're wearing a sombrero everywhere and people are like, oh, that's a big hat. It's something that is very natural, creates natural connections. So I want to film that in some way.
You mentioned you wanted to combine this with a love letter to Osaka in a way. What is it that you love so much about Osaka?
I think it's the social side of stuff. Like it really feels like I can connect with people and just get to a more casual level far quicker. And so, yeah, that feels really, really wholesome here. And yet it's still a major city. I know you can feel that sort of level in places in the countryside. And that's across the world. It's like you could say the same in the UK. You go to some of the more villages, and I grew up in a village as well, and everyone knows everyone. And that can be its own problem, or it can be, a blessing. Here in Osaka, it's still a major city. Like the metropolitan area is like 16 million people or something. So there's a lot happening, and yet you can have that real close, casual, like almost immediate friendship with people. And I love that.
So it comes back down to the kind of community human aspect of things. And yet most people you were mentioning end up going to Dotonbori because that's what people do. So for you who is now based here in Osaka, what areas do you particularly like? Where do you like to go out and shoot in Osaka?
So I definitely spend most of my time in the northern side. So like the Kita area, so like Umeda, Nakazaki-cho, Tenroku, Fukushima, like that sort of area, I guess. I do also go south into like Namba and I guess like surrounding areas. But realistically, I'll spend 90% of my time in the northern areas. And it feels like a stark difference on the people who are there. There's less, I guess there seems to be less outside interest. And I can completely understand why, because everyone's like, what do you do there? Like, it's very hard to pinpoint for visitors of what to do in Osaka because...
Eat.
Yeah, but again, most people, unfortunately, don't travel that way. Mm-hmm. Like, they travel to see things and do things. And I grew up as not a foodie at all. I feel like I got trained into appreciating and understanding food culture so much more than what I did growing up. And so, yeah, my previous me wouldn't have cared too much for that. But yeah, it's really hard to pinpoint if you're coming to visit here. What are you going to do? Because there aren't really that many landmarks that you could point out like I could, say, in London or in Tokyo.
Not in Osaka, no.
Yeah.
But then when you walk around in that Kita area and you have your camera in hand, what do you pay attention to? Except for the light, which is the obvious answer.
The light is the obvious answer. I think it's just uniqueness. Because this is going to sound so artsy or whatever, but every photo is a capture of a moment in time. So it's like, so what about that image makes it so unique to that particular time? And it could be that, it's as simple as like a bike passing through a bit of light or something, or maybe someone's got an interesting like outfit on or a hat, or it's an engagement happening between two people, or something that makes things unique and what catches my attention. But likewise, I'll wander around and I often do like laps of a place, and myself, I'm overthinking like, oh, probably someone's probably watching me here. They know that I've been around here 4 times, and all the restaurant vendors, they're like, oh, didn't that guy pass? Like, oh, he must be really hungry if he can't decide where to eat. And I'm like, no, I'm just shooting. So yeah, I'll just keep wandering and exploring. And I guess the second aspect that ties in with the photography and the social is that I'm really in tune with finding energy. So as I'm going around, I'll find where the energy feels vibrant, where it feels kind of strong. And that could be like a tiny snack bar, or it could be a standing bar, or, bigger food place or something. And I feel like I've grown a skill that is very good at finding the good energy. And it can be different from night to night. So it could be that maybe one night this place was great, and I go back another day and I'm like, no, it just doesn't feel right. Or it could be completely dead. You're like, okay, why was that dead? So I'll go around and just sort of feel if something's calling to me. I'm like, why is that place? Like something about the light, or something about the laughter I'm hearing, or like the smell of the food just feels right today. That's the one I'm going into. And then I go in, and almost all of the time, it ends up being something really like crazy or really fun, or it's never a regret of like, oh, why did I end up in this place? Like the food was bad, or I don't know, didn't talk with anyone, or whatever. And so then I question myself. I was like, well, is that everywhere? Is that just Japan? Because I know you can't really go wrong with the food here, for example. But I know that you can kind of end somewhere that falls a bit flat on itself. So yeah, energy is what I'm looking for.
Where do you find inspiration for your photo style? Do you have any maybe Japanese photographers that you like their work and kind of inspires you to do certain things?
So I think I get a lot of my inspiration on things more from my design interests. So I love browsing around, I guess like record stores or places that are showing, I don't know how you describe it, but
Of graphic work?
Yeah, like places that would be like a bit of a honey trap for creative people. Maybe they've got like nice little trinkets of stuff, and then maybe some flyers are laid out for some upcoming events that are happening in the next month. There's always interesting design there. And so when I'm looking at that and I see the geometry of things, that gets me really inspired. I don't quite know how that translates to photography, but it does somehow. Sometimes photography is used in those pieces, and it's maybe like the typography over the top is what caught my attention. So I'm not entirely sure. And then I guess on photography inspiration, a lot of the people that inspire me don't necessarily live here, but they travel here frequently.
Okay.
And so I enjoy seeing that and become good friends with people as well. So being able to just go out and explore something that is wildly different to what we grew up with is always going to be engaging and enjoyable. The sad thing is always that at the end, they go home and I stay here. So I'm like, sorry guys, I get to carry on enjoying this. But yeah, I feel like photographers who come to Japan never make it one trip. They always come back again and again and again.
There's always more to see.
Definitely.
Any areas in Japan that you plan to go to next that you haven't been yet?
I've never been to Fukuoka, and I really want to go. I hear such good things about it. Again, the food, but also the social aspect of things. People are always saying that there are similarities. Like if you love Osaka, you're going to love Fukuoka. I've never been, and I'm hoping that I can somehow squeeze in a trip. Maybe by the end of the year, I'm not sure. If not, definitely next year.
You've got a few more weeks to go, but plenty more time ahead.
Yeah.
Is Osaka home now for the foreseeable future?
Yes, I think so. It's it feels like home. Like it feels like whenever I go away on a trip somewhere, I'm always really looking forward to coming back here and just sort of catching up with some of the local places that I'm frequently visiting. And again, as my Japanese has improved so rapidly, I could go away for 2 weeks or so on a trip and then come back. And it's such a nice feeling to be able to like connect with someone like, oh, like long time no see, whatever. But then also they're like, how long were you gone? Your Japanese has gotten even better. Like, what the hell? And that's not just them necessarily complimenting it. I feel it in myself. I'm like, wow, I'm talking so much more in various things. And so that feeling of coming back and having the familiarity, I really enjoy. yeah, it kind of like loops it all together. It's really special.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing your story, your insights into how it all got started, how it all came together, and basically sharing a little bit into what we may see from you in the future here in Japan. Hopefully we'll get to see that film about your camera.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
And your love for Osaka pretty soon. I'm very excited for it. Thank you everyone for listening and watching. This was Unpacking Japan, and we'll be back again next week. Bye. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on future conversations. And we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this episode, here are a couple more that we think you'll enjoy. Thanks again for your support, and we'll see you next time.